What's up?
Hi.
Look at you looking swole at 8 o'clock at night.
I'm trying.
Very cool. So I wanted to talk to you about quite a few topics, and I'm hoping that we can also do some follow-up interviews. There's just no way to get it all in at once.
No, yeah.
So you are someone that's very, very active on social media, and I appreciate your support. You're on My Lives, you're on Glenn's. You're just all over the place.
I do my best to get on everybody's, yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in the muscle game. I want to say hello also before before you answer. We've got some folks coming in here. I want to say hello to Tim, who's just been appointed director of the IB Physique America for Virginia. So congratulations to him. We'll be doing an interview at Strength Ethics soon. We got Mr. Roadblock, Jason Fitlight. All your followers are coming in here, so that's awesome. Thank you to everybody for stopping by. So how did you get started in the muscle game?
Well, I've always worked out since I was in high school. We had like programs when we were in high school that you actually had to work out as part of your classes. So I started working out from a really young age, fell in love with it. It wasn't until my 20s that I really started to get into the bodybuilding scene and what it was like to compete. So my first show was in 2009.
And just going back to school real quick, did you play a sport or were you just in the gym for different
I've
things?
played every sport imaginable. I was in volleyball, basketball, I played rugby, I was track and field star. I loved sprinting. That was like one of my favorite things to do in school. Gymnastics from a really young age. I was in figure skating, like you name it. I was pretty much in every sport you could think of.
Wow. What's up, my man? Seth Jordan's in the house. And so gymnastics, the body takes quite a beating. And I know like when you're a child and adolescent, your body tends to bounce back. But even at that age, when you're indestructible, gymnastics still takes quite a toll. And then you said track also?
Yeah. Yes. I loved track and field in high school and rugby as well.
Rugby. That's a little bit more aggressive, but that's pretty cool. Fit with Franco, what's up, my man? Thank you everybody for stopping by. And so, when did you do your first show? You did say that, but when was that?
2009 was my very first show.
And what division did you do then?
I started in figure because back then they didn't actually have physique, so I was in figure for 7 years prior to switching over to physique.
Gotcha. And where are you from originally, or where are you at now? If it's
From a little town.
Don't say the little town. Say the next big city.
So a little town north of Barrie, Ontario, in Canada.
Gotcha. So you actually started at a time which was very interesting because 2009, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 2009, women's bodybuilding was taking a little bit of a beating. So it wasn't quite marketed the way that it would be just 4 or 5 years later, thanks to Jake Wood and Wings of Strength, and there was no women's physique. So you were kind of like, it was figure or nothing, right?
Right. And I guess I had a lot of friends that competed in figure coming up. So it kind of it got my attention because I feel like that was like the only thing to do that, was attainable at that time.
Now, how did you progress? And I say progress, meaning how, like, I don't want to offend any figure ladies. I'm not saying that figure is I'm not knocking figure, but some ladies, I would say, like maybe like you, Amanda, want to put on more muscle, and maybe staying in figure, you actually, because, it's almost like you have to go against your body's nature, right?
And that's what happened to me. I started out really tiny, and I just worked myself into a different category altogether. And I started from placing really, really well in figure to really horribly, and I didn't know why. So I had to get a lot of the judges' feedback to figure out why, I was placing horribly at the very end of figure.
And I'm sure that you got to a point where you were kind of at a crossroads where you knew what you had to do well in figure, but maybe there was another option, right?
Yeah, I sat down with one of the judges, and he said, basically look at it like this. He said, your figure is here and you are over here. He's like, you worked yourself, out of a category and into another one. So you have a couple of choices. You can lose about 20 pounds of muscle and go back into figure, or you can just know that you're at the bottom of physique and you have to work.
And that's the thing too. Like that's why I kind of like squinched my eyes there a little bit, because it's one thing to lose 20 pounds of fat, right? Because it's like you got to do a bunch of cardio, you got to put the fork down. But to lose muscle, I mean, that's harder to lose muscle than to lose fat. And also psychologically, it's like you're backtracking from all this progress you've made. It's not a good.
That's why, I sort of was like, well, consider it a challenge for me, because I worked this hard to put muscle on, so I'm not going to get rid of it.
Right. And a couple of times I'm tripping over my words because I still have Novocaine on all this side of my mouth, but I'm trying to wing it. Yeah, I'm so happy that we're doing this interview too, because I want to do it for a while, and I know that you're going to be shooting with Amazon's, I think, pretty soon, right?
Coming up in the end of April, we're actually working the end of April on our cover for the May issue. Nice.
That's very cool. And Glenn is somebody that, he's talked about the box office appeal. He talks about marketing. He's not, and again, I'm not knocking photographers, but he's not just a photographer. He's a magazine publisher, and I'm not just saying this because he's my sponsor. I mean, you can tell from just how he gets down. But he's a businessman. He's a marketing guy. He's a photographer. And so for him to want to work with you, and again, you're a fantastic athlete, but he sees the bigger picture.
Yeah, he's a man of many talents, and he also has a great eye for talent. So, I've shot with a lot of people in the past, and, he also talks about, someone who has that type of marketable talent. He can see it in other people. So he knows what the draw is going to be to the magazine.
Exactly. And again, you can learn. If some people are like kind of like, withdrawn, reserved, whatever, you can learn to get out of your shell. But this, what you're doing right here with me, a lot of people can't do this, and they can't even do it for 3 minutes after a show. But this is even more intense than that, because we're going to go like 30 minutes here, and we don't script or anything.
I think for me, it's a little different. I have an acting background, so that's kind of part of my creative tools. And I love doing these types of interviews. You wouldn't know it because my personal life, I'm very introverted. So it's a little balanced, but yeah.
Well, it took me a second to laugh there, because I was like, you got to be kidding me. But that is like,
not it.
Well, you might be like some of the rock bands, like they got platinum albums all over their walls, but right before they hit the stage, they have the butterflies. They get a little nervous. You know what I mean? But it's like once you start talking, then you're good to go. And like Glenn says there, he can't wait to shoot. Glenn is a very creative person. You're a creative person. I'm a creative person. And so, when I was doing all this contest coverage, and even with what I'm doing now,
right,
some people don't get it. They're like, you're tired from work, but yet you do this. Like, but when you love something, it's still work. Don't get me wrong, but it's different,
Yeah, when you have that creative outlet, and you get butterflies when you want to do it, and it's part of you. It's part of your character, your personality. And it's the same thing with like me and shooting, bodybuilding, the whole acting thing. I do a lot of things that I'm not a one-dimensional athlete, and I have a lot of passions in my life and a lot of things that I enjoy outside of bodybuilding.
So did the acting precipitate the modeling, or vice versa? Because modeling is a whole career within itself, and there's a lot of folks that compete but they don't model. It's not like you are automatically a model. How did that happen for you?
I think it came together, I think, for me at the same time, because it was before bodybuilding even came about. I have modeled and acted since I was 7 years old. So for me, bodybuilding actually came after that.
Definitely. And Greg says, I'm the same way. The nervous energy before a show turns into adrenaline. When the first song hits, it's an amazing rush. And Glenn says, I'm a professional horseback rider. You're a professional horseback rider?
Yeah, I actually race resources as well. Yep.
I mean, what don't you do? That's amazing. Thanks, Glenn. And we got John Benavides in the house as well. Thank you so much for stopping by, John. But yeah, so I think, yeah, I mean, if you start acting at the age of 7, I mean, that has to build a certain fearlessness in you, you know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, once you start speaking, you can command an audience, you can command a room. And I think that the same goes with posing. When you're up on stage, you know, your creativeness comes out, but you also got to sort of own that audience, own that stage. Otherwise, you know, you're just going to fade off into the shadows, you know?
I feel like when I first started, like my very first show, I got stage fright really bad, but I became like a different person on stage. It's almost like a different persona. And then once you like tap into that, it's the game over. You just you don't even see the audience. You don't see anything.
Definitely. And you know, what's crazy too, and again, I know this sounds weird, but you know, you might be like literally trembling inside. The audience doesn't know that. So as long as you can kind of like put one foot in front of the other, they're going to be oblivious to it. And then, you know, once you sort of cut your teeth that first show, I think it's easier and easier. But then, you know, then it's like you could be your own worst critic. You know, everything's got to be perfect, and that's where the practice comes in.
Yeah, and that's what I even say to a lot of girls backstage when, you know, they're trying to get ready for the routine and they're like, oh, you know, I'm going to mess up this or that. I'm like, you know what? Nobody is even going to know. Nobody's going to know that you messed up anything. They don't know your routine. As long as you keep going and, you know, you have that confidence on stage, then, you know, everything's going to be fine.
So with regards to that, the Amanda Snooks advice here, when you're backstage, do you talk to people? Do you put the ear pods in? I mean, what's your mindset? It's a kind of a generic question, but it's so important because you talk to the wrong person backstage, it could ruin everything.
Well, I've always been like someone who helps girls backstage. I feel like the camaraderie, I think you see that a lot in the physique and the bodybuilding industry. We're all like sisters. So I feel like we all just, you know, have fun. We talk about, you know, what we're going to eat that day, you know, share stories. You get to end up like meeting so many people and becoming friends with so many people that you would have never met before. So I feel like, you know, there's a time and a place for that. Getting really close to like when I'm on, then that's the time that I focus. And, you know, no one's personally when I tap into my energy and it's like, you know, no one's my friend on stage, you know, we're here for business type of thing. But backstage, you know, waiting and stuff like that, you know, it's a hurry up and wait type of situation always. So I'm always, you know, friendly and, you know, give advice to people or share stories, all of that type of thing.
And that's fantastic because again, the people not to talk to you backstage are not, I'm not implying that they're negative, but they're nervous and they're worried, and that spreads like wildfire. So if you're, you know, encouraging and positive, you know, then you're counteracting that anxiety that they're going through, especially with the hurry up and wait aspect of it, because, you know, the best contests I feel are owed to great expediters and great backstage people and MCs and all that. But even still, you know, you got to be ready to wait. So I think it's good that, you know, that you're back there doing what you do. And then when you hit the stage, you know, it's all about you. And you got to be a little selfish, right? Because if you're not, I mean, you know, the judges don't have a lot of time to look at each person. So you really got to stand out.
Well, it's funny for me because I've never had a coach backstage with me either. So this year is going to be a little bit different for me because I do have a new coach. I've trained myself for so long. So I did hire a coach, and we are going to be like a different dynamic backstage, which is going to be like really interesting for me because I've never had that type of support. So it's going to be different going forward that way for me too.
Absolutely. California Tens asks if you're a pro, and Brian Blacksmith says no, not yet. And that's a great answer because
we're definitely we're going to be one and done this year, and we're definitely, you know, gunning for the pro card. The last few years I've missed it by a point, and it's just a matter of, you know, preference. Personally, I've gotten a lot of the judges' feedback, and sometimes it's a lot of politics. Sometimes, you know, you just show up every year better than the next, and you know what? It's just a matter of time. So.
Now, things may have changed from when I was like heavily into the contest prep or contest coverage realm, but where do you normally go pro? I mean, do you go to Canadian Nationals or North Americans? Because for Canada, there's only like one or two shows, right, for the whole country, right?
There used to be a lot less shows than there are now. When I was competing in figure, we had a graduated type of qualifications, which was a lot harder. So you used to only have one show per year that you could go to, because they didn't even, at that time, they didn't even award North Americans to go to.
Hmm.
So that was like quite a while ago, but it was only one show per year that you could get a pro card.
Right.
Now that I live in the U.S.
Oh.
and I am a resident, and I do have like my green card or whatnot, I do have a lot of eligibility to go to a lot more shows that can award me a pro card. So that is nice for me. I haven't competed in Canada for a while because of the whole COVID thing. They had a lot of restrictions, and it was even hard for me to go back and see my family. So now they've changed a lot of things going forward for COVID, so that's a little bit better. But yeah, for a long time, they didn't have any but one show that you could, get a pro card at. I think now they have like 2 or 3.
It's the second biggest country in the world. I mean, I know the population is smaller, but my gosh, one show back in the day, it was insane. And you had to win the whole division just to get a card. You couldn't be a class winner. You had to win everything. So, I mean, it's pretty tough.
Well, that's why you see so many athletes from Canada. They're amazing. You got Chris Bumstead, you got Regan Grimes, like all of those guys that come out of Canada. That's why, because we had the hardest competition around. If you weren't good, you didn't get shit.
Exactly. I want to thank everybody that's leaving hearts, because I've been on enough lives to know that when you hit a heart, it only gives you one. And there's been like 100 of them that have just keep. So thank you for that. And yeah, the COVID thing, I mean, I'm glad we can even say it now, like just say, because before you could even say the word, you get all sorts of, restrictions put on your account. But I remember going down to Tampa, which is the home of Titan Medical Center, and they're amazing. I don't know if you work with anybody, but they're fantastic.
So, I live in Tampa now, so I do know all about Titan. They're actually really good friends of mine, John and Sherry. So
awesome, very cool. And they're on their anniversary now, so we're on a do not bother them, please.
Right.
No. But who knows if that'll work? I'm sure they've already been bombarded. I mean, their life is Titan. I mean, there was a hurricane that hit that neck of the woods. They were at Titan. I mean, nothing stops them from going to Titan. But Tampa and Orlando, it was like a little bit of normalcy even during that whole pandemic. I don't want to say nonsense, but it got a little crazy there, and that's why I think they moved the Olympia down there. And it looks like they're going back in 2023 to Orlando. So it's something sort of.
Like Olympia was always. I used to do the Olympia amateur for so many years, and that was one of my favorite shows. And so for it to be in Orlando again is super exciting.
Absolutely. And again, to kind of go back a little bit in the interview, or the live or whatever, because I feel like we're chatting more than, Amanda, how's your day going today? But yeah, going back to that was like the anxiety of hurry up and wait. And I think a big part of why they're bringing it back to Orlando is because there was way too much waiting going on in Vegas. And in Orlando, everything was moving along, and the hotels are so much closer to the venue. It's so much more convenient for the athlete, because, again, without the athlete, you don't have anything, right? So it's going to be good.
I feel like there's a lot more money to be made there personally than in Vegas, but that's just my point of view because I love Florida and I live here. So I think the demographic and stuff, it's a smart choice personally.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I did want to talk about, a little bit of a sad note, but we lost IFBB pro Amy Richardson, formerly Amy Kozel, yesterday. And I've got an article coming out for strengthaddicts.com. Evolutionofbodybuilding.net did a fantastic job as well. And I just wanted to take a moment here and just remember her, because she's an amazing athlete.
She was an amazing athlete. She was amazing at her business. And my thoughts and prayers go out to her family and her husband.
Absolutely, as do mine, as do mine. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about life as a muscular woman, because again, you wear the muscle proudly, and you have earned it. And I feel I always talk to Glenn about this, on the phone, and we never talk for less than like 3 hours. But there are a lot of fans of muscular women, and I absolutely hate when they try to make it seem like it's only schmoes. Schmoes are like maybe like 5%, if even that. I mean, I've been to some shows where muscular women are drawing some pretty jacked dudes. So, but what's it like for you? The good, the bad, and everything in between?
I think coming up and getting more success with my physique as I watched it change over the years, and you're putting more and more muscle on, it was definitely interesting to see, the reaction of people. Now that I live in Florida, you can't hide it. So, you wear it proudly outside, and it's different to see people's reaction. For the most part, it's really positive. But sometimes I guess you feel like, and the analogy I use is like, you always feel like you're a circus freak, because people will just stop and stare, they'll stop what they're doing and just, look at you, or like have some comment, or, want to know how you get like that. Just simple things like that. I know I've gotten like a lot of clients from just being out in public, um, asking me like, what do I do to get, that type of physique? So I think it's a lot more respect than what I originally thought it was going to be like. But there is comments, especially on social media. You get like, oh, the odd comments like you look like a man and this and that. But I always say that if I cared about everybody's negative comments, I would be in a insane asylum. So really, you learn to just kind of move on.
And I think that's perfect advice also, because social media, again, it's one of those things. It's like you've got to have thick skin. And it's not like if you don't have it, you shouldn't be on social media. It kind of be like the stage fright thing. You can work at it gradually. I'm not a big fan of having private Instagram accounts, but if you need to have it private for a little while, do that. Whatever it takes to kind of ease into it, but be ready for the trolls. Like the old message boards back in the day, there'd be some guy trashing your physique, trashing your work ethic, and you go to his profile or her profile, there's like a picture of a goat. They don't even have a picture. They don't have a name. It's just a troll. But you got to be ready for the trolls.
I think, and I remember one show, I think it was the 2020 Olympia that I went to. Um, and of course, it was hard for everyone that year, all of the shutdowns and everything. And of course, I didn't look my best on stage. And that was something that was hard for me to adjust to, is like, I seen, sort of a forum online. It was kind of like when you would go to like something like Reddit or whatever, where you would see, comments and fans and stuff. And, they were commenting about my physique and how, I've never looked that bad on stage and stuff. And you're already sort of emotional from being on stage and having a bad experience. And then you get to read all of that. So like, that was hard for me to adjust to. And I think like you just learn that like people aren't going to know your situations or what happened during the show, that you don't need to explain yourself. Things happen. You're not always going to be at your best. You're not always going to have a great experience, and you can't always win.
Yeah, and far be it for me to try to give you like a 10th place like a pep talk or whatever, but I will say though, the fact that you got on stage in 2020 is a win in of itself.
Yeah.
Because so many people shut it down in 2020. They didn't go to the gym. Yeah, the gyms were closed for a couple months, but they just didn't go at all for that whole year. They didn't watch what they ate. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know about suicide rates or attempted suicide rates, but I would say 2020 it was pretty bad. I mean, it was pretty bad. Like, here in Louisville, it was awful. The gyms were closed. The supermarkets, you could only go in like little groups. Everything was wiped out. No bread, no toilet paper. It was really, really bad. And, all of a sudden people were being sent home to work. So the fact that you even got on stage, I mean, that's huge. And then let's not forget North Americans, Nick Walker, he turned pro in a tent.
Yeah.
So tough times. So kudos to you for competing and not giving up like so many others did, you know?
Thank you. It's definitely a trying time, but I always say that, things that go bad, it's always a lesson that you need to learn from it. So as long as you learn the lesson and you move on, we can be better.
Right. And like Greg says, a lot of hater trolls are just insecure. They can't get that much muscle. And it's the truth. They're so busy online trashing people. They're not in the gym, So now I think that people that ask you, how did you gain all that muscle? I hope that they can like digest the bad news, because a lot of them think it's in a pill or a certain exercise. But the answer obviously is time. You got to put in the time and the work.
Well, and I've spent 20 years in the gym now. So
right.
You don't get this type of dense muscle. It's only over time, that you can achieve it. So it's, like you said, it's not something that is so easy to attain or everybody would do it.
And even though you don't have a profile picture, and you should have a profile picture, because that's an amazing comment and it's so true, Kim, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that is the truth. And that also goes, and I'm going to get off my soapbox here, but that also goes for a bad placing. I hope that every competitor at least once takes a bad placing. That's not me wishing upon them anything bad, but it's important to have that, because there's so many competitors that all they know is winning, or top 5, top 3. They lose once, they never come back. So I think it's important for character to just be able to cut your teeth once in a while, or at least once.
Thank you. A lot of competitors in this industry want to blame it on something when they place bad, and I'm the first person to congratulate the person that wins, and have that type of sportsmanship, that, kudos to you, you looked better, you maybe outposed me or something like that, and there's always room for improvement. We can always be better.
Exactly. That's such great advice. So I really hope we can do another one of these, or 2 or 3, and especially after you shoot with Glenn. And I'm dying to know what show you're going to be doing, but don't tell me, and I don't think you would anyways. But
already been out in a lot of the podcasts, so I mean, it's no secret.
What are you doing then?
We're going to do Junior Nationals.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Where is that being held now? It's not South Carolina anymore. No,
that's Tennessee.
Right. Yeah. South Carolina is Junior USA's. Right. Okay. Cool. That's a great show, though. Fantastic show. Going to get a lot of national attention, international attention. And when is that?
That is in June, but we're thinking of doing just a regional show just to warm up.
Gotcha. Well, please keep me posted. I definitely would love to do another one of these. Glenn says, well, hold on. I want to make sure I read that. Hold on one second, Amanda. So classy, Amanda drove 8 hours from Tampa to come to the Amazon Fitness Magazine launch party, May 2022. So it is appropriate that Amanda will be on the anniversary issue. That's really cool.
I know. Super stoked to have that anniversary issue, and we have an amazing idea for the cover. It's never been done, so it's something that, I came up with that, that's why I love Glenn to pieces. He always will ask the models, do you have any ideas? What do you feel comfortable shooting? That type of thing. And I had one of these ideas in my head. That's the part of the creativity that comes out. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And he was like, okay, we're going to do it. So.
Absolutely. And then Humble Austin says, like the randoms that ask for a 6-week program to look like someone who's been working for years. Yeah, I mean, people want overnight results, and it just doesn't happen.
But we live in a society where everything's at your fingertips now, and, that's why people assume that, these things are easy to get or attain, right?
And I was going to mention Natalia Coelho very briefly, but before I do, I want to say welcome to Kim Smith, IFBB Pro, who I interviewed her in Pittsburgh when she turned pro. And like you, absolutely gorgeous, wears the muscle proudly, one of the nicest people, most humble people, and accomplished people. So thank you for stopping by, Kim. And then with regards to Natalia Coelho, also just to talk a little bit about what we were talking about before, and I'm going to shut up here, is the fact that, she didn't always win. I mean, she was getting seconds and thirds, which is really, really good, but she kept coming back. And now look at her. She's, Miss Olympia Women's Physique. So, again, it's just
It's such a dear friend of mine. It's funny, when I went to, when I did my qualification, I had to requalify this year at the Thai Pope Classic, and she was the first person to give me all of my awards, and she's a dear, close friend of mine. I've known her for years, and I've seen her place like second and second and second, and, you know, she got a lot of hate this year because she did a lot of shows, and people were wondering, you know, why she was doing so many shows, and, you know, why aren't you just, you know, resting for the Olympia? And she is one of the best sportsmen that I've ever seen in the sport. She is so humble and sweet, and she will talk to anyone. She is amazing representative of the sport.
Absolutely. Absolutely she is. And again, like I said, seconds and thirds, sometimes when you get second, it's almost like, please give me a worse placing, because second is so difficult to process. Kind of like you, 1 point off. You know what I mean?
It's so frustrating. It's just like, you're right there, they're dangling the carrot, and it's like every year you come back better. So it just gives me, you know what, it gives me more motivation, just to be like more tenacious and just keep showing up. They're going to get sick of seeing me. So, you know what, it's just going to get better, and then they're going to be like, here you go.
Absolutely.